Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another exciting episode of Young and Dynamic. My name is Desire Gatera, and I'm going to be your host today. Before we go any further, allow me to give you the rules for this meeting. Number one, make sure that your mic is always on mute unless you are told to unmute by the facilitators. Number two, if you are leaving the meeting briefly, make sure that you switch off your video and you switch it on when you are back. Having said that, allow me to give this time to Mia, who is our prayer leader today. Mia, over to you. Kindly lead us in prayer.
Good afternoon. My name is Bryce Shito, and I will lead in prayer. Father God, we come before your throne of grace this afternoon, thanking you for the gift of life, thanking you for the gift of leaders that we have here on this platform, oh God. Lord, we invite your presence into this place, Jehovah, so that you lead us in each and everything that we're going to do. We thank you for our guest, Jehovah, Mr. Andrew Hadley, who's going to be leading us today, Jehovah. We pray that you guide him, you give him all the wisdom and knowledge to give us all the necessary things that are vital in our everyday lives, oh God. We thank you for each and everyone that is connected today. We thank you, Jehovah, that you're going to be with us from the beginning to the end of the session, Jehovah. We invite your presence, Jehovah, so that you get to lead us in each and everything that we're going to do. It's going to be according to your will. I pray and leave the session into your hands. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.
Amen and amen. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Lord Praise. And ladies and gentlemen, today we are on episode 2 of our 4-part series on values that will change the world. Yes, we've been learning last week. We learned about one of the topics on the values that will definitely change the world. And yes, today we continue again with our second episode of that 4-part series. Allow me to introduce our speaker for today, who is Andrew Hadley. Andrew Hadley is director of the Center for International Learning and Leadership, an independent organization which promotes international thinking, values, and skills. Andrew has lived and worked in several countries, including in China, Turkey, Greece, Macedonia, and also in Ethiopia. He recently visited Zimbabwe for the first time and is excited about developing partnership projects here and also hopefully in other African countries. Andrew loves learning languages and learning also about different cultures. He believes that we all have something to learn. We all have something to learn from each other. So relationships should always be based on mutual respect and benefit. His other personal interests include music, film, and astronomy. He is married with 3 grown-up children and he lives in London. Andrew will be taking us on the second episode of our 4-part series. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, loud and clear.
Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to anybody who wasn't with us last week. It's a great pleasure, a great honor to be invited to come here and speak to you with the Higher Life Foundation and the Young and Dynamic program. As I said last week, it's always fun and interesting to work with young people. It inspires me, and I hope somehow we can help it to inspire you as well. It's a pretty hot day here in London. You might be surprised to know, very hot actually. So forgive me if I'm drinking some water as we go along. I'm going to do this session slightly differently from the last time. There will be more pictures. You'll see my screen more than you see me, which is definitely a good thing for you. And I hope we can have a bit more time for your comments and questions. And I will be asking everybody to write a few things into the chat as we go along. I hope we'll also have time for some questions or ideas at the end. And I also wanted to say that, as I said last week, the fourth session in 2 weeks' time will be based around the questions that you send in or the ideas that you want to talk about. So we need you to write in and tell us what you want us to talk about, or anything from these sessions that you would like us to go into in some more detail, for example. So please send your comments to the High Life team or put things into the chat, and the team will pick them up. So that will be great. So excuse me while I share my screen and hope that this will work okay. And there's no sound involved, so it's only pictures to look at, any various things to look at as we go along. This week I'm calling the session Truth, Integrity, and What It Means to Be Curious. I hope we will cover those subjects, but let's start with a little bit of curiosity. You might see there's something quite interesting behind me over here, and this is from China, where I used to live, and it's a screen, a very big screen. It's taller than me, and it is a representation in the Chinese mythology of the heavenly palace, with the Chinese spirits and gods and the things that they represent. So it's a rather beautiful thing, a cultural object. I thought you might be interested to see that. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Remember last week we ended up with the key points about, how you're going to change the world and what you need to do to begin with. And it's those two questions. Ask people, why do you think that? And then ask yourself, why do I think that? Because if you don't examine the way you think and the way that other people think, you'll always be in a mist, in a fog, and you'll never see the truth clearly. So those are I believe, the two most important questions that we can ever ask, and we should be asking them all the time throughout our lives. Now, here are some of the values that we mentioned last week. We talked about identities and families, being passionate, caring about things. We're going to come back to that today. Positive energy, creativity. Creativity, we will look a little bit more next week, I think. Courage and determination. Critical thinking, we will also look at next week. Thinking for yourself. Diversity, we will talk about today. Objectivity, self-questioning, authenticity. Again, we'll come back to that a little bit today, although using the word integrity this time. Well, here are some of the topics that I'd like to cover today, and we'll see how we go. Truth, that was the first one in the title. I think that's the most interesting one. It's something pretty important to all of us. It's something that we're wrestling with in our days, politically and philosophically. We hear phrases like post-truth, alternative facts, and so on and so forth. We find it hard to navigate our way through. The second one, curiosity. If you want to find the truth, you've got to be curious. And that's what we're going to look at as well today. Curiosity means being interested and being interested in people. It's got to be about people. There is no truth without people. And people, the one thing that people do is to tell stories. So we're going to look a little bit about the importance of stories. And finally, when you talk to people and you hear their stories, what you get is diversity, you get richness. You see how much difference there is, but as well, how much similarity there is between people. And we will explore that a little bit during the session. And all around those main topics, we might talk about some of these things as well. Wow, that seems like a lot for one short session, doesn't it? And well, we may surprise ourselves if we manage to cover most of those things. Get your notebooks out and make a note if you hear any of those words, or you think we've covered those topics, and we'll see how well we do by the end of the session. And finally, we might be even going to touch on the meaning of life. Something which interests all of us, and that's a big one. That's a really big one. So, how about that? Can you see the real me? It's an interesting picture, that one. Remember that other people might see you differently too, but they can never see all of you. Only you, as I think we said last week, only you are the expert about you. But on the other hand, they might see something from the outside that you can't see from the inside. So I'm sure there will have been times in your life when you would have said, I can't do that. I'm too scared, I can't do that, or I'm not good enough. And somebody else might come to you and say, yes, you can do that. Yes, you are good enough. They give you that support. And I believe that a key aspect of leadership for you throughout your careers is to remember that, and that you need to find that strength in other people. You need to be the one who tells other people that they are good enough. Again, that's something we're going to return to in a few minutes. Now, the next picture I'm going to show you is, I want you to type in the chat, please. I just want you to type one word, and the word will be old or young, depending on what you see. Look at this picture, and the first thing you see is it old or is it young? Give you just a few minutes to type in the chat. Old or young? Who do you see? That's interesting. Most are saying young, but some old. That's good. It's always very interesting to see to hear what people see in this picture. This is quite a well-known optical illusion. Some people, I guess most people, see an old lady with her nose here, and here is her mouth down at the bottom, and a chin and a scarf. But just a few people see the scarf, and they see the ear of a young lady, and her nose and her eyelash, and she's looking away from you. So quite an interesting one. It's a little puzzle, just to show that the truth isn't always obvious. And and different people can see the same thing different ways. Here's another one. I love this one. Just have a look at this and what on earth is going on here? What's happened to this elephant? How do you know what's real here? What's true? How many legs has this elephant got? It's crazy. And of course, it's a trick, and it's an illusion, an optical illusion, which are always great fun. But the truth is that the truth also can be tricky. Sometimes it's quite hard to know where to find the truth or what actually is true or false. And from a philosophical point of view, and I'm interested in this, I studied philosophy years ago at university, and truth was actually one of the topics that we had to study. Philosophically, is it possible for something to be true and false at the same time? I don't have an answer to that question, but it's a good question. Or is there another state? Is there something in between true and false? Or something which is not true and not false? Something different altogether? And a good case in point there is fiction. If you read a book that is just a story, well, it's obviously not real, so it's not true in that sense. But I'm sure you'll agree that a fictional story can contain many truths. So it's not exactly false either. Now, moving on, this is the way I quite like to think about truth in this way. And I enjoy metaphors. I hope you enjoy metaphors as well. Sometimes they're helpful. If you have read or if you've been taught about the ancient philosopher Plato, you will know that he had a theory that we could never see the reality of things. All we could see was images as if they were on the wall of a cave, and we could only see the representation of reality, but we could never actually see through to the reality itself. I prefer to look at it slightly differently. I like the image of a mirror. And imagine that this is how you see the world. You see the whole sky through the mirror, and you can see how beautiful it is. And you can see the whole picture. You see the whole truth. But actually imagine that the mirror has smashed. And it's smashed into a million or a million pieces. And all of those pieces have been scattered all around the world. And you only have one small piece. You have your own small piece of that mirror. And everybody else in the world has their small piece of the mirror. And with that small piece, you can see a tiny little bit of the truth. You can see a little bit of the sky, but you can never see the whole thing. And the same is true for everybody else. Nobody can see the whole truth. So that might be also how you see other people or how they see you, in fragments, but maybe not the whole. As I said, you are the one who comes closest to seeing the whole of yourself. Truth comes in fragments, and fragments make up the whole person. And we see this sometimes in art as well. Here is a beautiful picture made of photographs by a very famous British artist. He's probably our most famous living artist, a man called David Hockney. And this is a portrait he made of his mother. Many years ago, he made this portrait. She was an old lady. And I find it very interesting why he chose to create her portrait in this way. out of fragments, not as a whole picture. And I think there's something here also that for him, this better represents the truth of his mother. Because when you think about it, when you deeply love someone, it is very often the small details that you notice and that you remember about them. And those become more important than just seeing the whole in itself. But those pieces, of course, make up the whole. So I think that's what he's done here. He has looked at all of the details of her face and all of the things that he remembers and that he loves about her, whether it's her eyes and her nose or her mouth or her scarf or her ear. And he has pieced them together in this very interesting way. So I think what he's trying to do there is also to get at the truth through fragments. When we come to the religions of the world, there is often felt to be conflict between religions, and I think it's wrong. These are the symbols of most of the main religions, or some of the main religions in the world. And conflict comes about when you say to somebody, I have that mirror, I have the whole truth, and you have none. And I think what we need to do is to acknowledge that maybe they've each got a piece of the mirror. We haven't got that whole truth. We need to understand what other people are also thinking and have a look, ask them to show us their part of the mirror, and we also show them ours. And I think this is one of the reasons why we have conflict and one of the ways in which we can avoid conflict. Now, finding more pieces of that truth means finding out about people. It means being curious. And we need to see if we can find something else other than our own small piece. And you can only do that by connecting with other people. And there's a famous writer who wrote a novel, and in that novel he used the phrase only connect. And it's a well-known phrase, certainly in my country, only connect, meaning that is the answer. That is what we need to do to make our lives meaningful. We need to connect with other people. And when we connect with other people, we gain another fragment of the truth. Now, if people are bearers of the truth, then each person has a piece of the mirror, but the truth also begins with you, yourself. And the best thing that you can do, and the thing you have to do, and you have to keep doing throughout life, is to collect your own fragments, the parts of your own image, to make them into a whole person. And this is what we mean by integrity. Integrity, the actual literal meaning of the word integrity, is wholeness, completeness, being true to yourself. We used before the word authenticity, authentic. It's the same thing, really. Having integrity is being true to and in yourself. But that's not always easy. But if you don't have it, how on earth can you be an agent of truth or of good in the world? How could your body function properly if your eyes look one way and your hands point another way and then your legs go in another way? You would be in a complete mess, and that would not work. So it's just the same way about the way we think and the way we behave. If you say one thing, but you do another, you do not have integrity. And it's even worse. If you tell someone else to do something, but you don't do it, then that's hypocrisy. And certainly no integrity there. So be true to yourself. And it's not instant That's not something you can just do and have it finished. It's lifelong. And as you collect and you explore other parts of the truth around the world, your own truth will change and you will grow. So inevitably, this is not static. Your own image is not static. Just as you look different when you're older than when you're younger, when you're a baby or you're a school child, you're an adult and you're an old person. You will look older. You'll be the same person, but actually physically, probably every atom in your body will have changed over your life. So that is the beginning of it. Being true to yourself, having integrity, and being curious to find the truth. Now, talking about curiosity is also about seeing how other people see the world. And one of the ways that I think is very interesting and enjoyable to look at that is through maps. Here's the map. I guess we're all pretty much familiar with this map. I grew up with being taught with maps like that. And most people in Europe are taught with maps like that. I expect in a lot of African countries are taught with maps like that. But why is that like that? Why is that map like that? Why does it look like that? Why is my little island called Britain up here right in the middle? And why is it so big? Because believe me, it's not as big as that really. That makes it look as if it's half as big as the Democratic Republic of Congo. How could that even be possible? Why is that map like that? Well, when these maps were developed, there was the British Empire. And they always say history is written by the winners. It's the same with geography. Those ones who are powerful, they see the world in their own way, and that's the way they want to teach the rest of us. And when I lived in China, I realized how interesting it was and how valuable it was to get a different perspective. Because when you're in China, that's the world map. That's what every Chinese child sees in school. And suddenly I noticed that my little island is a little island off near to the edge of the map. Doesn't look very important there. And that's the way that the Chinese always thought about Britain throughout their history. When they had strong emperors, they thought we were a little island somewhere in the Western Sea. And that changes your perspective. Let's look at some more, which are pretty interesting. I mean, when you look at the world that way, my God, it changes completely. And you begin to notice details or notice things that you didn't notice before. And it's purely coincidence that we happen to decide that north is north and south is south. It doesn't have to be that way. The Earth is just a large ball floating around in space. It can be any way up you like. And here's another one. Now, this is a very interesting map. This is called the Mappa Mundi, and it's the earliest map from the Middle Ages. This is about 700 years old, and it is in a cathedral church in England, in a place called Hereford. And I've seen this map. I've been there, and I've seen it, and it's very big. It's very magnificent, and very, very precious. It's the only one like this, and this shows you how people used to see the world hundreds of years ago, because in this map, east is at the top and west is at the bottom. North is on the left and south is on the right, more or less. And this was a map which shows the world view. And I think Jerusalem, their holy city, is in the middle. That represents the Mediterranean Sea the dark area in the middle, and all the rivers that flow into that sea. And that was their worldview. And it's so important to see that historical perspective as well, because we need to understand how people thought before us and how they saw the world and what truths they had or they discovered. We might not agree with all of them now, but they will enrich us all the same. A few more. That's a good one, an interesting one, seen from the bottom. It's a different layout, a different perspective. Look how big Antarctica is. We don't often think of it. It's down at the bottom of our maps. We forget about it, but it's a huge place, enormous, as big as Australia. And that one is supposed to be the most accurate representation of the size of some of these countries, because if you put that map together around, it will fit around a ball, it will fit around a globe. And finally, I like this one. I think it's rather beautiful, just the way it's laid out. It looks like a butterfly. Again, it's the globe deconstructed. But through all these different maps, we can actually see different perspectives on the world as seen by different geographers, different scientists, different political viewpoints, different historical viewpoints. And maps, I think, are a great way to be curious. Okay, let's just have a pause for a couple of minutes. And if anybody's got any thoughts or questions you'd like to put into the chat, and then I think our MC Desire will read out if there are any interesting questions or any comments. And of course, I welcome any comments from the team as well.
Hello, Mr. Andrew. My
Hello.
name is Praise Shito, and I'll be taking over from Desire.
Okay, hello, Praise. Nice to see you again.
Amazing. So, hello, everybody. If you've got anyone who's got any question, please show by raising your hand or typing in the chat box so that you get the answer that you require. Seems there are no questions, Mr. Andrew. I think you can go on.
I'll go on. But I'm very keen to encourage people to write in questions, even if not right now, that they send us in some questions that we can talk about. Thank you, Saul. We appreciate your comment. I think you said, I guess I was too gullible. I think we're all gullible. It's very easy to be gullible. It's very easy to be to think that what you see is what's real, or to think that you know, to take things on their face value. If somebody comes to sell you something and they say this is a great thing, oh yes, thank you very much, and you pay them $100 for it, and you don't actually examine the quality of it before you buy it. Most of us wouldn't do that. We would think about it. We would look. We would try to find out whether it's valuable and whether it's something that's worth paying money for. And it should be the same with information and with truth, which is actually more important to our lives than physical things. Okay, thank you very much. Good. Let's go on a little bit. Your name. I want to talk about names. I want to talk about names because names are something that are really interesting me at the moment. I think this is at the heart of what's wrong with our world at the moment is about names, and I'll explain why in a moment. But I want to ask you, you know, if somebody says, what is your name? You just tell them your name. I want to ask you, what is your name? What is it? Not just my name is Andrew. What is that? What does it mean? And I don't also just mean what does it literally mean? What is the point of your name? What is the purpose of it? What does it do? What is its power? It's not just a way to identify yourself. It was chosen by someone. Very few of us choose our own names. Sometimes people do in some religions, for example. People might take a religious role and they choose a new name. In a military world, sometimes we hear these warlords who give themselves their own fierce name. There are some circumstances where we give ourselves a name, but in general, we don't choose our name. Somebody chose it for you. Who chose it? Why did they choose it? Why that name? Why not another name? What's its meaning? What's behind the name? Your name is special. It's beautiful, and it is your truth. This is where your truth lives. It lives in your name. And if somebody hears your name, what will they hear? What will they know? What will they believe? What will your reputation be? We say, this person has a good name. It means they have a good reputation, or they have a bad name. It means they're not trustworthy. You want your name to be special, and you want your name to be heard, and you want your name to be respected. And your name is you. There's no separation between you and your name. So think about your name. This is a good starting point for your curiosity. Start with your own name. What is it? And ask each other, talk to each other, talk to your friends, talk to your family about your name and their names. And it's an interesting thing that, I read a lot of ancient literature. In the ancient Greek world, very ancient world, the name was so special that if you were welcomed into somebody's house and you were a stranger, you will never tell them your name at the beginning. Only after you get to know them, after you eat with them, after you drink with them, after you stay in their house, then you trust them enough to give them your name, to tell them your name, because your name is so special. So, of course, nowadays we don't. We introduce ourselves with our name, but it doesn't stop the name from being special. The name is still incredibly special. So my interest in names comes from a few books that I've read recently and a few things that I've been thinking about. And starting with something that I read, which said that the new edition of the Oxford Children's Dictionary has replaced a lot of its entries with different things. So, for example, in the old editions, they had the words for all of the different type of trees and all of the different types of plants and most of the kinds of animals and all things about the natural world. But they've taken away a lot of those things from the new edition because they needed space to put things about technology and computers and algorithms and games and all of these things and all of the technical hard things of the modern world they wanted to put in here. And the only way they could do it was to take away things from the natural world. So there are a lot of people, a lot of young people out there who go out and if they see a tree, they see a tree. But they don't see anything more than the tree because they don't know what kind of tree it is. They don't know that there are different kinds of trees. They don't know how to look for the difference. They don't know how to give it a name. They don't know, in some cases, even how to give some different types of animals names. Hopefully they know a cow and a sheep and a dog, but do they know what kind of cow or what kind of sheep and what kind of dog? Almost certainly not. Very few. Probably less than 5% of people know those differences. And I'm coming to this picture in a moment, but the problem is here that if we don't name something, if we don't know how to name something, if we don't know what it is, we don't see it and we don't care about it. It's absolutely a fundamental thing about our relationship with the world. These are some yams, actually. And if you see a whole bunch of those yams in the marketplace, or you put them, we have a game I play with young people sometimes. You put a whole bunch of these on the table, and you ask somebody to take one, and everybody takes one, and they hold on to it for a couple of minutes, and you say, now put it back. And they put it back. And then you say, okay, you mix them all up again, and you say, now find your one. Find the one that you had before. They cannot find it. They can never find it. They all look the same. They're just yams. They're just nothing. Why would you care about it? So then the next step, and you should play this game. It's worth playing this game. It's quite fun. Get some friends and play this game. The next time you mix them up and you say again, okay, choose one, take one. And this time, look at it very carefully. Get to know it, see what its characteristics are. Is it big? Is it small? Is it long? Is it short? Identify it and give it a name. And then put it back and mix them up. And when you mix them up the second time and you say, now find your yam, they'll find it. 9 times out of 10, they'll then find it because they know it. They know its name, they know its characteristics, and they care about it. And that is so, so important when it comes to nature and to the environment in particular. Look at this beautiful field of flowers. I think this is in Africa somewhere. South Africa, I think this is. What a beautiful array of flowers. But if you just call them flowers, you're missing something. We need to give them names. We need to know what they are. We need to know which of them are endangered, which ones we need to look after. How do they grow? And if we know that, we can look after them and we can care about them. And if we know about our natural world and we can name things, then we will care about those things. It's vital. We must give names and we must care and we must look at detail. And even more when it comes to people. You could say, it's just people. That's just a bunch of people. I don't care about them at all. And if it's a group of people that you don't know, they're in another country, maybe you think they're against you, a different culture, that's when you start to say, it's them, it's just them, just they. I don't care about them. They are others. But that's not true. They're not others. They are individual people, just like you. Each of those people in that huge crowd, they all have their name, their special name. They all have their piece of the truth. You need to care about them, but the only way you can care about them is by starting to know their names. Not maybe every individual, but you know something about them. You know the names of their cultures, or you know some of the characteristics that define them, and be interested about them. And then you start to care about them. And you also start to see, first, yes, they may be very different from you, but also how much they may be the same as you. So important names, naming, caring. And I'm going to come on to some intercultural aspect in a moment, but that I do think is a fundamental point of our work, of our world, that we don't give things names, and therefore we stop to see, we don't see them anymore. And I came across this quotation in a book just a couple of days ago that I'm reading, and I thought this was amazing. Nothing exists until it has a name. Now, when she wrote that, I think she probably meant that a medical condition doesn't seem to exist until somebody gives it a name. But I think that phrase is fantastic, because I think it means nothing, literally, exists for me until it has a name. And I don't care about it if it hasn't got a name. So that's why I find names so vital, so important. another book I was reading had this quote, and this was a book about Albania, and about a man who was in charge of a big factory, and he was told that he should fire all the people because it wasn't making enough money. And it says, he tried to recall the names of all the people who worked there, even though there were hundreds of them. If I forget their names, I will forget about their lives, he said. They will no longer be people. They'll become numbers. Their aspirations, their fears will no longer matter. We will only remember the rules, not to those to whom they apply. Only think about orders, not about the purpose that they serve. Another example of the importance of names. Any other comments? I think a hand went up somewhere. Praise, did we have a question or a comment?
Yes, let me ask. There's Ephraim Tukumenayo. Let me ask him to unmute so that he says what he wants to say. Hello, Ephraim. Can you try to unmute? Okay, so Mr. Andrew, whilst Ephraim is trying to unmute, there is another question here, and I'll read it out. So it's saying that, what is the relationship between truth and power? Some argue that truth is used as a tool of power and that those in power have the ability to shape what is considered true, while others argue that truth can be a check on power and that exposing the truth can help to hold those in power accountable. Should I repeat the question?
Yeah, I've got it. I can see it now in front of me. I think it's an excellent question. I think it's a very, very intelligent question. And all I can do, I can't answer that question except to say that I agree with the problem that it's expressing, because that's exactly what we're seeing nowadays. So I can't speak about your countries. In my country and in America, these are really big questions, because it is quite true that we see truth sometimes being obviously abused. But somebody used the word gullible, and it's very easy for people to be gullible and they just accept what they're being told. So yes, power wants to have a monopoly on the truth, and I agree. And as I said about history, those who are powerful write, the ones who are the winners are the ones who write the history and who draw the maps. And that's, so the truth that we learn in our schools is what they tell us that we should learn, or what they used to tell us anyway, what we should learn. I think we're a bit more inquiring nowadays, but this is an absolutely excellent question. Thank you very much for that one. That's from Joshua. Thank you, Joshua. Okay, we'll go on. A few more points. Oh yeah, I mentioned stories. I'm just showing you this picture because it makes me laugh, actually. Here is somebody reading a story to some school kids, and look at the little girl in the middle. She's bored. She's just so bored. She doesn't want to listen anymore. But I don't know how many of you know who this person is, who this man is. Until about 6 years ago, he was our Prime Minister. So I love this picture that the Prime Minister is reading a story to some kids in the school, and they just don't care who he is. They just, if they're bored, they're bored. And it must have been an embarrassing moment for him, but it's a funny picture. But stories matter. And whereas politicians might just read a story to kids just because they want to have the cameras there and show how nice they are, actually reading stories is the way that we teach our kids. All young children learn through stories. And there's this is something that has been going on in all societies for all of history. And I love this picture. I don't know which country this comes from, but I think this is such a lovely picture of kind of traditional storytelling. And the problem is that we forget about this. When we grow up, we stop telling stories. We stop listening to stories. We think stories are just for kids, but actually stories are where our truth is embodied and where we find the truth. So we mustn't stop telling stories. We mustn't stop looking for stories. We mustn't stop listening to stories. And where do stories come from? They come from other people. And the more that you listen to other people telling their own stories, the more you'll discover the richness that exists in those people and the truths that they have to offer you. And what you'll find is something called multiple intelligence. Some of you may have heard of this concept. We tend to think that if somebody is intelligent, we seem to say, oh, that person, they're very, very intelligent, very brainy. What we mean is they're probably very good at maths or something like that. Very logical, very clever. But it's widely thought that there are actually lots of different types of intelligence. And these are what you discover when you talk and you meet to different types of people. You've got verbal intelligence. People who are good with words, who are good at talking, good at communicating with other people. I hope that's one that I have a bit of. It's probably the one I would identify more for myself. I'm okay with logic, mathematics, no. You've got something called interpersonal intelligence. People who relate to other people very well, who really can connect, only connect. Yes, they're good at connecting, the connectors. People who are have visual intelligence. They might be artists, photographers, filmmakers, those kind of people. They have strong visual ability. Bodily, kinesthetic intelligence. People who are good at dancing. That's not me, I'm afraid. If I come to your countries, I'll be ashamed you'll be ashamed by my dancing. But I know that many people in African countries are fantastic dancers. Not all, of course, but we see so much dancing. And gosh, what a good thing that is. And then there's musical and rhythmic intelligence. I have a bit of that. I love music. That's one of my real interests. Intrapersonal intelligence. These are people who are maybe more spiritual, religious people, philosophers, the people who look inside and find the truths from there. Quiet. They tend often to be very quiet people, thoughtful people. And then naturalistic intelligence, people who can connect with nature, who understand animals, who love plants, who grow things, who are good at gardening. This is also a kind of intelligence. And usually most of us have a mixture of these. We'll have, some of them well developed, some of them only a little bit. Maybe one or two that we don't have much of at all. But we're all a mixture. And what we have, therefore, is incredible diversity. And when I said last week that friendship is not the same as similarity, it's the same with the people that you work with. You don't want to be surrounded by people who are all exactly the same as you. A football team needs people who are really good with their bodily intelligence. They've got to be able to kick the ball in the right direction at the right time and find exactly the sweet spot to get it where they want it to go. But a football team, to be a good team, needs a good manager. It needs somebody who's good at communicating with the fans. It needs somebody who can look after the ground. It needs somebody who's got the mathematical skills to run to run the finances and so on and so forth. If you want to be successful, and if you want to have a good team around you, you need to find people with a wide range of different things. And sometimes the solutions to problems can come from the most unexpected places. So you might find that it's an artist who comes up with the solution for your business problem. It's not impossible, and it has happened. So look for difference, look for diversity, look for richness of experience. And I would say that everybody has it in some measure. I don't believe there's any such thing as a boring person. If you're finding that somebody is a boring or an incompetent or a useless person, the chances are you are not asking the right questions and you're not listening. You're not listening to their story. And I had this experience myself when I took over an office from a guy who was quite a hard manager. And he said, oh, well, the first thing you should do is you should fire that person. She's useless. You should get rid of her. That's not my style. And I spent quite a lot of time talking to this person, to this lady. And I found that she was just in the wrong job. She didn't enjoy what she was doing, but she had a lot of ideas about doing something else with another part of the work. And as soon as we put her in a different job, which she enjoyed, and where her intelligences were better used, she did great. So it's just about hearing the story and listening. So that's about stories and people and the importance of diversity and difference. Just quick one. Any quick thoughts, questions? I'll just have a quick look at the chat if there's anything there.
Hello, Mr. Andrew. I have
Hello.
something for you here.
Thank you.
So I was saying that in the beginning of this session, you say to know the truth, we have to connect with people. So my question is, how do I find the truth without connecting with people? I'm asking this because not all people are not able to socialize.
That's true. But of course, you won't find every truth from every person, and you won't connect with every person and every truth. I mean, there are people, of course, who are limited by circumstances, sometimes by disability or mobility or other aspects. But actually, there are very few people, in my experience, who don't have some connection with the world and with other people. But if people's connections are limited, then at least then you can do it kind of through other people. You always have somebody with you. You always have somebody around. If you're able to get books, then books. If you're able to listen to wise or older people, then you can benefit from their experiences. Television, radio, and other media. There are myriad ways, but of course, yeah, it's not easy for everybody to just go out and about and say hello to everybody that they want to. I understand that, and I think is a very good point. So thank you for that.
Amazing. And there's another one here. So I'm saying that on that same issue of perspective, doesn't the limitation of context play a big role in limiting our worldview?
Sorry, the limitation of conscience, did you say?
It's on that same issue of perspective.
Yeah.
Doesn't the limitation of context play a big role in limiting our worldview?
Probably, yes. We all come. We can only come from where we come from. Let's put it that way. So we will always grow up within an environment or within that context that will appear to impose limits. But I think what we're trying to say here is that it's up to you to try to go beyond those limits. It's what I said last week, is to be a traveler. Not everybody's a traveler. Not everybody can be, but in some sense, to travel. If you live in a valley, and you're supposing somebody living in a valley in Nepal or somewhere, surrounded by mountains, and nobody from their family ever went out of that valley. When they are the first one who goes out of the valley, it's a big effort. It's difficult. It's difficult to go out, and And the valley could be physical, real mountains, or it could be conceptual. It could be just those ideas that from that context that form you. And it takes courage, determination, and strength sometimes to go beyond those horizons. But when you do, that's when the world opens up, and then that's when you come back and you become a time traveler, as I said last week. So yes, absolutely, it matters a lot. We can't get away from that context, but nevertheless, and we shouldn't get away from it, because context is also tradition. So I'm not saying that we should break away from our traditions. On the contrary, they're a very important part of our story and our truth. But we need to be able to go beyond them.
That is great. Thank you so much. It seems for now there are no questions.
Thank you. Let's go on. I'm not far from the end. You'll be glad to hear. Okay, a little bit on intercultural learning. What we see here, what does this iceberg in the north, the frozen North Sea, what does it tell us about truth and curiosity? I'm going to do this one quite quickly, but it's important. Because what we see, what we have to be aware of is that even when we're asking those questions and we're connecting with other people and we're looking for truth, that might be what we see. But we also make assumptions. We just expect certain things, or we say that person is from that country, so they must be like this. Andrew is from England, so he must be a such and such person. That's you see me on the screen, but you're making certain assumptions about me, about my age, about my background, about what I like. I expect you've made lots of assumptions as I'm talking, and we all do that. But reality, there's all that underneath that we don't see and that we don't know about. And that's where we've got to start to explore. And if we're going to be cultural explorers, understand different people's contexts, I like that word, context. If we're going to explore those, that's where we have to go. We have to try and understand what else is there beyond what we see and beyond what we imagine. But it's difficult, as you said. How do we get through? How do we get through the ice to go down underneath? And this is important, because that bit that we don't see, the things that we don't know about, that's where you get conflict, because people don't understand each other, and nations don't understand each other, cultures don't understand each other, religions don't understand each other, because they don't go down, and we're not looking underneath, and we need to. That's why we need intercultural learning. Okay, coming to the final part here. The night sky. You must look at the night sky. I'm sure you do. We should all do it often. In the night sky, we find beauty, we find wonder, we find mystery, we find infinity we find there. It is just immeasurably huge and overwhelming and beautiful. If you take a handful of sand from a beach, in that handful, in that one handful, there are actually more grains of sand. I love this statistic. I think it's true. There are more grains of sand in your one handful than all the stars you can see in the sky at night. That's thousands. But there are more grains of sand than you can see stars. But how many stars are there really out there in the whole of the universe? There are more stars than all the sand on all the beaches in the whole world. Now that number is so unimaginable, so magnificent and impossible, that it makes us feel so small. And in some ways that's a good thing, because we have to have perspective. But it also causes us problems, because I mentioned the meaning of life. Now, This is the problem it causes us, really. We look out there. Is there anybody out there? Is there life somewhere? We probably will never know. I personally believe there is. I believe we're in a huge pond and a huge ocean, and that there must be life everywhere. I really believe that. And I would love to see evidence of it, even if it's only one microscopic type of life. But if it's there, we probably never meet it. If it's not there, we're just on our own, on our tiny little world. And it makes you think, how can life have a meaning? And what's the point of doing anything? Well, my answer to that is quite simply, that's exactly why there is a point. That is exactly the meaning. Because if we are here on completely alone, then what we do is even more important than otherwise, because there is nowhere else where it has meaning. So what you do in your life, and what you do even in our tiny short lifetime or day to day, it really matters. And it means we have an incredible responsibility. And that responsibility is towards each other, it's towards the truth, and it means we must be curious. But if you're curious, look at the night sky. Okay, that's what I have for you today. And I apologize if those were some mixture of thoughts. They are things that I think about and that I'm interested in. I'm going to give you two challenges to go away with and to take home for the next week. This is your homework, let's say. The first challenge is just a creative one. Just going to excuse me for 1 second while I'm going to stop the share for 1 second and then come back again. Just give me 1 second while I get that correct. So, the first challenge, this is creative for you. I'd like you to draw, you have on a piece of paper, and this is fun to do with other people. If you can do it with someone else, it's fun. You're going to draw 5 shapes: a square, a circle, a triangle, a plus, and an oblong. And then you'll have another space. You'll have a 6th one, which is empty. The 6th one is, it's up to you what you put there, anything. And what you're going to do is that you're going to use those shapes to make a picture. So for example, the square might turn into a house. This is my very bad artwork. Sorry, I'm not a good artist. But you don't have to, this isn't an art contest. So each shape you're going to turn into something. Maybe a face.
Hello, Mr. Andrew, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
We cannot see the screen from this end.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will
okay.
Stop and start again. I don't know what's happened there. Let's just. Can you see it now?
Yes, affirmative.
Okay, good. So you're going to draw those shapes on a paper, and each shape will turn into a picture. You will create a picture based on those shapes, anything you like. As I say, I drew a little house and I drew a little face, but it doesn't have to be. Maybe the circle is a football, or maybe it's something else. And the question mark means anything that you want. You can draw it's a free freestyle, this one. And it doesn't matter which shape you choose for which, but you will use these shapes to represent something about you. The first one will be something I truly believe. So that means your values, something I truly believe. The second one will be something I am good at. The third one will be something or someone I really care about. The fourth one is something I want to do in the future. The fifth one will be something I want to learn. And the last one will be somewhere I want to go. Okay, so something I truly believe, something I'm good at, something I care about, something I want to do, something I want to learn, and somewhere I want to go. This is up to you. It's just some fun, but it's a way to think in perhaps a creative way, and hope you can enjoy that with your friends. The second challenge I have for you relates to what we were talking about. I'm going to ask you this week, and hopefully next week you can tell us what you did. Go out and make a new friend. Find somebody who needs a friend. Maybe it's somebody that you know who doesn't have many friends, or who's in difficulty, or who maybe it's an old person who's lonely, or it's a poor person, or anybody you like. But a new friend, somebody you don't know. And ask them to tell you a story, which is their story. I sometimes find it's useful when I meet beggars in the street. I meet sometimes people just begging for money. And usually I like to stop and just ask them. I say, what is your story? And they appreciate more than just being given some money, because they have something to say. And I learn something from them. So make a friend and ask them to tell you their story. And thereby you will enrich yourself with a new truth. So that's your challenge for the week. And I hope that you'll enjoy it and that you will discover something new. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Andrew. You are so amazing. We're grateful for the time and awesome dedication that you keep showing to us. The session was amazing, and we had to see the bigger picture from another perspective. This has been a great experience, and as young people, we are to take many key takeaways from you, which I certainly believe have given us a good and different way of looking at things. So we're so grateful and looking forward to the next session of the 4-part series. It's been great having you here, and we cannot wait for part 3. Stay blessed, Mr. Andrew.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for all of you for listening. And please do send in your questions for part 4, when we're going to try to create something around the questions that you ask.
Amazing, amazing. So moving on to this week's announcement. Remember to like, comment, and share Young and Dynamic posts on Facebook page and our society channel. Please do remember to hit the subscription button on our Young and Dynamic YouTube channel if you haven't done so yet. Remember to like, comment, and share ABC's Prosperous Minds on Facebook, on Twitter, and the Instagram page as well. Global Intercessors platform is open 24/7. Please do remember to connect anytime that you'd like to pray. Once again, it has been great having you all here, and we're looking forward to the next session next week. Young and Dynamic continues next week, same place, same time. Goodbye, and please have a blessed week ahead.